all of eastern Ukraine. That's a huge departure from denazification in general. We're going into our fourth month of this conflict, and Russia appears to be closing in on achieving its stated objective of liberating the Donbass region from Ukrainian government control. It's been a very difficult fight. The Ukrainians have shown tenacity. They've shown resilience, and they've had the benefit of having 8 years to have prepared extensive defensive positions in depth. They've also been the recipients of some $53 billion worth of U.S. military aid and tens of billions of additional dollars worth of foreign military aid. To put this in perspective, this is a conflict that, in many ways, is a massive artillery duel between Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine started this conflict with thousands of artillery tubes and multiple launch rocket systems. So did Russia. Russia has succeeded in destroying hundreds of the Ukrainian artillery systems. But in the past month and a half, the United States and Europe have provided Ukraine with over 300 advanced artillery systems and multiple launch rocket systems. That's the equivalent of 20 battalions of artillery. 20 battalions of artillery. The United States Marine Corps, one of the finest fighting forces the world has ever seen, only has 11 battalions of artillery. So we've provided Ukraine with nearly twice as much artillery that's used by the entire United States Marine Corps. And the reason why I bring that up is that, some people will say, well, why is it taking Russia so long? Because it's a heck of a fight. I mean, this is real war. This isn't fake war. This isn't counterinsurgency. This isn't hunting down Taliban. This isn't kicking the doors in on Iraqi homes. This is closing with and destroying a very determined, very well-armed, very well-trained, very well-led military that is fighting for what it views as its homeland. This is a tough fight. Russia's winning, but winning, comes with a cost. This isn't, this isn't something that Russia is doing, cost-free. This is a war that's costing Russia significant casualties and significant material loss. It hurts. War hurts. But Russia is prevailing, despite the massive amount of military assistance Ukraine has received and will continue to receive. So that's where we're at right now. We're in the closing weeks of what we'll call phase two. The next one is denazification. Russia has had a major military and political victory when it captured Mariupol and defeated the Azov Regiment, which is one of the leading neo-Nazi affiliated military organizations in the Ukrainian service. There are others. And the Azov regiment has not been destroyed. They have affiliated units still operating in Kharkov, around Kiev, in Lvov, down south. It's a very large organization. It's regiment in name only. It's more like the Azov division. And there are other far-right units as well. And then also the Zaporizhzhia Oblast or region that connects. It's pretty much the land bridge between Crimea and Donbass and Russia. Russia has captured these. Russia says these will never be returned to Ukraine, ever. End of story, not a discussion. So we're there. But even when Russia has achieved all this, there are still Nazis in Ukraine, Nazis that are under arms. The reality is the Ukrainian government is a Nazi government. Zelensky, the Jewish president, has banned all political parties in Ukraine except the Nazi parties. The only political parties that are allowed to exist today and function as a political party are the far right-wing neo-Nazi parties. This means Ukraine is a Nazi nation. I don't know why the West doesn't get this. It's sort of right there in front of you. But how do you denazify a Nazi nation? You have to destroy the nation. You have to eliminate its leadership. You have to eliminate its political system. Is Russia willing to pay the price necessary to accomplish this? But Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, said something very interesting. Russia will continue denazification of all of eastern Ukraine. All of eastern Ukraine. That's a huge departure from denazification in general. As many casualties the Ukrainians have suffered, the Ukrainian defense minister said something the other day, which should perk everybody's ears. 700,000 men are now under arms in Ukraine today. 700,000. The Russians started this special military operation with 200,000. Let's say they've suffered 20,000 casualties, and they've replaced those 20,000 with 60,000 replacements. So today, Russia has 240,000 troops on the line. That's 240,000 against 700,000. That doesn't mean Russia can't win. They can. But this means the war will go on forever, because it's a lot of fighting to take down 700,000 men, many of whom are equipped with some of the most advanced weapon systems in Europe and the United States. Does Russia want to do this? Because in order to take it to the next threshold, Russia would have to transition away from a special military operation and into general war, which would require mobilization, etc. And so now we have to factor in the other aspect of this conflict. Speaking of the military aspect, there's an economic aspect as well. And here Russia holds all the cards. The sanctions package that was supposed to A, deter Russia from moving on Ukraine, and B, destroy the Russian economy so that Russia couldn't sustain its actions in Ukraine, have backfired. Europe is in a dire situation right now. Their economy is collapsing collectively. Russia, on the other hand, is doing okay. They're doing okay. It's not great, but they're doing okay. The ruble's well, the market's well, and they're developing extensive contacts in the East with China. I mean, they already had connectivity, but they're expanding this connectivity. They're doing interesting things with non-dollar transactions. It's not looking good for the petrodollar. It's not looking good for Europe. It's not looking good for the United States. And as long as Russia doesn't transition into a wartime economy, because general mobilization would mean not just manpower, but the economy would mobilize. And this would be harmful for the Russian economy. Russia's looking at a winning hand economically. And I think Russia might be making a political decision right now that it is willing to terminate the military conflict with the goal of continuing this standoff with the West via economic means, that Russia then can achieve what it wants to accomplish by applying economic pressure, meaning that the West will tell Ukraine, you're never going to join NATO. The West will tell Ukraine, we're going to stop supplying you with arms and ammunition. And the West will tell Ukraine that if you ever want to join the EU, you're going to have to do changes in your constitution that ban neo-Nazi parties, mainly pressure the West to finish the job. This is a lot of speculation on my part, and I think this is why we see Lavrov saying denazification in eastern Ukraine, because this is a very, very deadly game being played here. And even though the Ukrainians are suffering tremendous losses, the Russians are suffering considerable losses. And Ukraine is fighting for its national survival, so the pain threshold is much higher. Russia is not at war. They don't have a war economy. They have 200,000 troops that are on a special military operation. So the pain threshold for Russia is much reduced. So you can achieve the same kind of political pressure on Russia with fewer Russian casualties than you can with massive Ukrainian casualties, because the Ukrainians are willing to take pain up until the point of death, apparently. Russia's not. Russia has a cap on what they're willing to lose. Odessa, of course, in May of 2014 is where the Azov, what became the Azov Regiment, they stuffed 150 ethnic Russians into a building of trade and culture, I think it was, or something of that nature, Union Building, and set it on fire and killed nearly 50 of them. Horrible death. And Russia has never forgotten, and Russia has never forgiven. So Odessa is a symbol. And the Russians are all about symbols. If you don't believe that, you don't know anything about Russia. You don't know how they revere May 9th and the symbology of the defeat of Nazi Germany. Now the Ukrainians have said they've just received advanced Harpoon missiles that are more advanced than that, which means they can reach out and touch Russian ships at a greater distance. And if Russia allows Ukraine to hold on to the Odessa coastline, it's losing, strategic depth in the Black Sea, and that's unacceptable to Russia. So I think for a variety of reasons, this war ain't going to be over till Odessa has a Russian flag flying over it, and the victims of May 2014 have been avenged. And Ukraine will never be able to threaten Russian shipping again, ever. So I don't think this ends without Odessa being Russian. Again, the fact of the matter is there would be no food crisis if the West didn't want a food crisis. It's not Russia that's starving the world. It's Europe that's starving the world. Europe is preventing Russian grain and Ukrainian grain from reaching the global market. No one else.